Gamers all around the world, people have been waiting for this. I haven't done Civ tier list in 2 months because we had a bunch of patches. So we just got the Mango nerf patch, and you know, they might change it again in a week, but I feel like let's just make a Civ tier list, and if they change something again, we'll make something again. That's how it goes. So this Civ tier list has changed quite a bit from, I feel like, 2 weeks ago. So what am I going to base the Civ tier list? A lot of people say, like, make one for feudal, make one for imperial, make one for early game, make one for late game. A Civ is looked overall, right? How good the Civ is, you look at it overall, because that's just how it is. So what are the criteria I'm going to be looking at? How playable is the Civ on all 7 map or all 6 maps in the ladder map pool? How strong Civ is in the feudal, in the castle, in the imperial, and how many Civs counter that Civ, and if that Civ is very predictable or not. So all these things come into play. It's not just like, oh, but this Civ is OP in Imperial, but then it sucks in every other age, everything counters it and so on. So that's it. So this is overall, this is obviously my opinion. I've talked to a few pro players. Again, some things people agree with, some people don't, but the Civ tier list will give you a good overview of which Civs, in my opinion, are good right now at the top level. Obviously, same rules might not apply to plastic leagues, but here we go. The worst Civ by far right now is AOE4. Nothing surprising. AOE4 was not in a good spot before the changes. And now with the changes and with getting the official map pool, which most of them are open maps, AOE4 is just not good. The only maps that AOE4 is really good on is Mongolian Heights and Helendale. But then if you pick AOE there, a lot of people have like blind counter strats for, you know, getting castle and relics. Overall, it has pretty weak feudal compared to the most Civs. Castle is pretty good, but it's kind of hard to get there at a high level. And then Imperial is indirectly nerfed, as well as Castle. So the reason for this is the Mangonel nerf, even though it should be really good against melee units, or before, the Mangonel nerf actually countered ranged units. So AOE playstyle was basically a lot of men-at-arms or a lot of knights into siege. You know, Mangonels to stop the crossbows or to stop the hand cannoneers, Streltsy and grenadiers. But with Mangonels being nerfed, it's very hard to counter ranged units with melee units, and the strength of AOE is melee units, so they have nothing to kill the ranged units with. Technically, they can go hand cannoneers themselves, but other Civs do it better. Yeah, it's the worst Civ, and it is what it is. It's sad because AOE is probably my favorite Civ. I love playing AOE, but there's just something missing, and it relies quite a bit on taking the relics, where, you know, there's other Civs like Delhi, right? They rely on taking the sacred sites, but it's not a game over if they don't have all 3. While if you don't take the relics as AOE, it's really, really bad for you. With that being said, moving on to the next Civ. I usually do top Civs first, but we're going to start from the bottom. Starting from the bottom, and now we're here. The next Civ in line is Chinese. I would say they're not same tier as AOE. They are a bit better, but again, if we played on the quick match map pool, where, you know, there's Mountain Pass, French Pass, Black Forest, China is a lot better, but open maps don't do too well for China, and you know, the maps China is good on is like Helendale and again Mongolian Heights. The only difference from AOE is China is very good in Altai as well, but other than that, it's pretty rough. Maybe I'm missing another map that China is good on, but like I said, it's also a Civ that relies like AOE to be kind of left alone and go for the late game. It doesn't have great feudal, and the current meta of the game is feudal aggression. So if you can't do that well, you're gonna struggle quite a bit. And we've seen in the recent tournaments, every time someone picks China on open maps, they end up losing versus whatever Civs they played against. So, and the funny part is, if you have a China versus AOE matchup, then AOE beats China, but AOE loses to a lot more Civs, in my opinion, than China does. And China is playable in one more map. So if you can get to the Imperial, you know, with China and have bombards and grenadiers, it's amazing. But at a high level, I don't remember the last time I made grenadiers. just because you can't afford it. So if you could make Grenadiers somehow easier, it would be probably one of the best civs, but as it is, you know, not doing too great. Now, from here on out, the civs are very close, I'll say that. But in my opinion, the next civ on the chopping block is hard to do, actually. I think these two civs are bottom by quite a bit. And I would say the next civ or the next 6 civs are very close to one another. And usually when I do civ tier list, I put like 1 or 2 in the S tier. And then I usually say like, okay, from here on out, it diversifies. It kind of depends on who plays which civ well. Except now I feel like these 6 civs are closer to one another. In my opinion, Abbasid is probably B tier right now. I think it's still a good civ, and it feels wrong putting them in B tier. Maybe I should just not put anything in B tier. I'll just go like this, maybe. Delete row. I'll just go like this, because I don't think it's that great of a civ anymore. It got a lot of nerfs. And Abbasid is still good for the fact that you can safely fast expand and get your economy growing and kind of beat the other player with just a massive economy. But I do think that over time Abbasid might drop more. So it would be like in the B tier, and then China in the C tier, and then Aether in the D tier. And the reason for that is, well, Mangonels got nerfed. And the best part about Abbasid was hitting that castle, you know, popping down 3 Mangonels and attacking straight away. You can't do that anymore. Because, well, not only they increased the siege build time for Abbasid, but also Mangonels are not as good anymore. So these kind of timing attacks are gone, and they've turned into a more defensive civ rather than aggressive, super hyper aggressive in castle and like timing attack civ. A lot of players still think it's quite decent. I don't think it's necessarily terrible, but it definitely lost a lot of power together with the berry nerf. It's just not what it used to be, and I might be wrong, but I feel like it might go down as time passes. Just because the strengths are not as impactful as some of the other civs. The next civ that I will be talking about is Rus. Rus has seen a lot of popularity increase. Probably they're better than Abbasid in my opinion. So I'm gonna just put them left side of Abbasid. I think Rus is amazing. I think Rus has a lot of, I think last time I did the civ tier list, I put him at the worst, like the bottom tier. People figured out the boar build where you take the early boar and you put a lot of pressure, and that's all great. And people had insane win rate. Insane win rate with Rus. It was just slapping everything, clapping people left and right. And it's still very good. That is still very much viable. But people kind of figured out a little bit how to defend against it. So people are doing better against it. Rus in Castle, I would say, is pretty underwhelming. Rus Feudal is very strong. Rus in Castle, not so much. And then Imperial Rus with Streltsy is really, really, really good. But the thing is, once you get to the Imperial stage, even though Streltsy are OP as hell, Lena, thanks so much for raid. I hope you had a great stream. Even though Streltsy are very, very good in Imperial, you have to compare to the other Imperial civs, which is China and English, and I think both of those civs will completely demolish Rus in the late game, because the sprinkled upgrade was nerfed as well. So even though Rus will beat any other civ with Streltsy, it will lose to the 2 top late game civs, which is English and China. So I'm gonna have to give it an A tier. But I will say this, but hold on. But there's been horse archer spam going back into the meta, and Rus might be S tier again. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna do it like this. I can't put HRE or Rus next to Abbasid. I just can't. I don't think they're equal. I think Rus is better, in my opinion. So again, a lot of people will put Rus next to Abbasid, and a lot of people will put Rus in S tier. Not me. And this one is Omega Lul. So we got XD and then Omega Lul. Next civ I will be talking about, surprisingly perhaps to everyone, and I think if I did a poll here, which next civ will be the A tier, not many people would pick this one, but honestly, I don't think Delhi is that good anymore. The berry nerf was actually more impactful than I thought. Delhi is still amazing civ, by the way. Maybe even the best feudal civ, I would say. Maybe top 2 feudal civ, I'm not sure. But as the players are improving more and more, games are not ending in feudal straight away. They're going castle, they're going imperial, and Delhi, bar none, has the most trash imperial ever. The imperial of Delhi is so trash that people just all in castle. They never go imperial because the upgrades take so long to kick in that you're gonna lose the game by then. So the only reason why I'm placing Delhi in A tier, not S tier, is because while it's an S tier civ in feudal, it's playable on pretty much every map except maybe one. Delhi's imperial is just god awful. It is just god awful. Like I said, players are getting better, games are getting longer, and Delhi is not getting any better in that regard. I do think that Delhi may be, a bit too strong in feudal. It still does really well, but imperial is just so bad, and it makes the civ very predictable. Like when you play against Delhi, you know that they're going to be all in against castle or feudal. So it is what it is. Now, the top 3 civs in Age of Empires 4 are English, French, and Mongols. And this feels a little bit like Age of Empires 4 release. These 3 civs were the best civs at the start of Age of Empires 4. And they're back at the top. And, we can thank their sponsor, the Mangonel nerf, for this. And I'll explain why. Abbasid specifically dropped down because of the Mangonel nerf, and because of the siege in the field taking longer to build. But even if that wasn't the case, the Mangonel nerf hurt Abbasid a lot. Like a lot. And H3 as well. It obviously hurt the Mongols as well. But Mongol is the best designed civ while being OP. So what do I mean by that? We've seen Mongols getting nerfed time and time again. But Mongol, I think, is truly the best designed civ because it can it can, Tower Rush in Dark Age. It's very viable in Feudal Age. It's very viable in Castle Age. And it's really good in Imperial Age. Mongols don't have a weakness. Even though Mangonels were something Mongols were relying heavily on, it's still very good civ. So basically what happened is, Mangonel kind of wrecked Abbasid because they lost that castle potential because that was their thing. Mongols are like, okay, we can't make Mangonels in castle, but we still got Lancers, we still got feudal play, we still got imperial play, and they don't really have a weakness. They don't really have a weak spot where it's like, oh, they're really bad at this point. So while they're very strong balance-wise, design-wise, I think they're the best civ because they don't have one play style, they have multiple play styles, they can tech switch, they can do whatever. And I personally really like playing Mongols because of that. It doesn't feel like I'm forced to do something. It doesn't feel like, if I don't do this now, the game's over. There's so many ways you can respond to your opponents and so many things you can do. I think it's just an amazing civ. And if devs want to make the game great as it can be, every civ should be more like Mongols where, yes, there's some strengths. Yes, there's some weaker spots, but you can't do anything, right? And I think it's just a well-designed civ, a fun-to-play civ, and really good civ. I'm not sure which civ of these 3 is the best, by the way. So the order of these 3 doesn't matter. I would say Delhi is better than Rus. English is just so strong right now. There's multiple reasons for it. Their feudal age is very strong. Like you can push with feudal. If you decide to rush castle, there's almost nothing opponents can do against you because your food is under your TC with farms. You have longbows that can get attack speed from the TC and you defend with them. Your gold is usually very close to your TC. And then if you get fast castle, then you have access to another town center and you can just go off of that. English used to be very one-dimensional. This is something I mentioned in every civ tier list where you have to attack and there's nothing else you can do. Well, with Mangonels being nerfed, suddenly Castle English ain't so bad because, if you go castle and play defensive, you can even go knights, you can go mass infantry, you can go knights into longbows, into trebuchets. It's not bad at all because It's very hard to counter the mass infantry style of English, even the knights into longbows. So they got an indirect buff by mangonel nerf, and English is probably the best late game civ right now. The reason for that is you get batshit insane DPS increase from the attack speed buff on your longbows, on your hand cannoneers, on your crossbows, on your siege, and you can just kind of mow down every civ. A lot of civs here rely on melee units. Well, you can't make almost any melee units against English because hand cannoneers are going to blow them up. Plus, English has really good men-at-arms. English has the Dark Age rush now with men-at-arm, where they go and deny the gold. Again, they became very strong, but design-wise, the civ has improved. Why? Because English is now the most similar civ to Mongols, where English can rush in Dark Age. English is very viable in Feudal. You can rush. English is very viable in Castle Age, and even rushing Castle with English has become the meta. And then English in Imperial is amazing. Balance-wise, are English and Mongols too strong? Probably. Design-wise, they're great. And I don't think that's something that should be changed. I think that's something that should be encouraged. And last but not least, French. French might be a little bit of a weird pick because French doesn't have strong Imperial compared to some of these other civs. I mean, it has strong Imperial compared to Delhi, but who doesn't? It doesn't have strong Imperial compared to English, not strong compared to Mongols, compared to Rus, even compared to Abbasid and Atari and China. French doesn't have a good Imperial, probably 6th, 7th a best Imperial out of all the civs. But the current meta that I was talking about earlier is extreme feudal aggression and denying opponents resources, and French is, with their knights, is just an amazing civ for that. It's very easy to deny opponents food and starve them out. So while their Imperial is not great, more often than not with French you can put yourself in position where you're far ahead enough where hitting Imperial and opponent hitting Imperial doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel like, okay, well, I lose. You can most of the time play off of it. You can put a lot of pressure in Feudal and then go Castle and then kind of extend your lead by taking the relics, making a castle somewhere. Even making a second TC with French in Castle is becoming more and more popular. Also making a second TC actually in Feudal with French is becoming a thing. So overall I think French is just very strong. It's very hard to play against them, I would say, and you can lose the games like this against French where few knights find your workers and you lose like 5-6 workers at a high level. That is just incredible amount of damage that they can do. Now, with that being said, French are not necessarily OP, and I don't think we'll see a lot of players banning French in the future necessarily, because you know what to expect out of French. They are strong, but you know what to expect, and there's nothing really that yells like OP to me, where, with English, Imperial is very fucking strong, the trebuchets late game are very strong, so some people might ban that to avoid it. But you wouldn't necessarily ban French for that reason unless you're playing civs that are very bad against French, right? And one of the things that makes French pretty good, pretty decent, is I think they have a good matchup versus Mongols, and they have a good matchup against English. And they have a good matchup against Delhi, by the way, and against Rus. But that doesn't mean it's an auto win. That just means that they do pretty well, right? They do okay, you can win. Where some of the other civs, if you play them, you're kind of like, I'm playing this versus that. Not great. And in a funny way, China is, I think, the best counter to French. And Abbasid is very good against French. But because they're low tiers, they're not picked as much. Or they won't be picked as much, in my opinion. So French will be better because of that. Because it does well against the top civs, and it actually doesn't do well against the bottom civs. So, obviously it does do well against A3, but, who doesn't? So, yeah, that's my opinion. Like I said, this might change next week. Maybe someone figures out a build with Abbasid. Maybe someone figures a build with Chinese. Who knows? But this is my current opinion. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more English and a lot more French in the upcoming weeks. And I think on the latter, they're right now the most played civs by far. So, I'm actually curious. Let's check. What is the ranked leaderboard saying? Yeah, I would expect... this to kind of continue, and English probably has a higher win rate. I think AOE4 World doesn't. This is a quick match stats, and they don't have stats for ranked yet, unless I'm wrong, which I might be. I think once that's out, I think English will see a lot higher win rates, followed by French and Mongols, because this is also, I think, before the Mango thing. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. And if there's another change, or if there's a meta change, I will make another civ tier list. If it's like more than, you know, just moving one civ up, one civ down. If there's a big patch or something, I will let you guys know. If you're watching on Twitch, let's keep going.